Hey nurses, it's Janet Stolnick with NNC Members Lounge, and I often have nurses approach me and they'll say, hey, I just launched my legal nurse consulting business, but I have no idea where to start. So in this video, I actually want to share with you what to do when you receive your very first merit review case from an attorney, and I'm going to walk you through 5 steps to help ensure that you have everything in place so that you do everything right the first time around. So stay tuned. All right, so the very first thing I do when I'm on a phone call with an attorney, or if maybe they reached out via email, is I ask them for a brief synopsis of the case, and I also ask for the date of injury. Now, the reason it's really important that you ask them to identify the injury is because sometimes they will send you over a ton of records, and if you don't have a date, you really don't have a starting point. So you may be like fishing through medical records for days and days and days, and a merit review is typically a really quick way for them to find out if they want to pursue this case and invest money in this case. So if you're spending a ton of time searching through medical records, that's time that you're billing the attorney, right? And if you give them a really big bill, they're not going to be happy with your services and they're not going to want to use you. So you want to make sure that you ask them to identify the date of injury so you have a starting point, so you can kind of work your case around that date, and that way you are not billing the attorney an exceptional amount of money when they first do use your services. So that's something that I always do. Ask for a brief synopsis with the date of injury. They tend to just send you a brief synopsis without a date, and so you need to make sure that you ask them to identify the date. The second thing that I do is I fill out what's called a legal nurse case log. So I actually developed this on my own for my business, and it's literally just a legal nurse case log. I have along the top here is the case name or number. Some are identified with a number, some are just names. It just depends. A lot of personal injury attorneys or workers' comp attorneys actually have a number that they assign to the cases, and some med mal attorneys don't. It's just so-and-so versus so-and-so, okay? The case description, the attorney name, what is the to-do? You know, if this is a merit review, we'd write merit review there. If you have a subcontractor, what's the deadline and the date that you submitted or turned it in? The reason I like this is because I have gotten so swamped with cases. If I don't have a case log, I would not know what I'm doing. So I actually print a bunch of these. I have them in a binder, and I keep track of all the cases that I get, and then I'm able to go through and say, you know what, I only have like 4 hours to work today because maybe I have a doctor's appointment or something. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do all the merit reviews because those are typically quicker than like a timeline or a chronology or a written report. So I'll go through, do all my merit reviews, get those done, get some of that quick cash, right? And then I can move on into something that takes a little bit longer, more of my time. So you definitely want to create a legal nurse case log for your business, and that'll help you keep track as you're accepting these merit reviews in other cases. The third thing I do is a case screening form. So I'm going to show you my stack of them here. I have a case screening form, and basically it's about 8 pages long, and it tells me that the name of the case, if there was a death, the date of the death, the attorney client, what issues the attorney knows thus far, the services that they've requested, if I needed a subcontractor, who that is, what their rate is, what are the documents that I'm looking at, I want to keep on top of that, any major research that I have to provide. So if there is, let's say somebody broke their wrist and it's a certain surgery, I may need to research into that surgery and find out what the standard of care for that surgery is. And then I want to document that and keep track of the research that I'm using, because they'll use that in depositions and in trial. They need to have the most up-to-date research and standards of care, right? Any summary of care, if there was negligence, who was negligent, write their names. It's really important that you keep track of names and page numbers as you're going along, because if you're going through 3,000 10,000 pages of medical records and you're not documenting page numbers, you can easily get lost. And when the attorney says, here's a great report, what page did you find that on? And you can't find that page, you're gonna feel like a dodo bird. So you wanna make sure that you are keeping track of names and page numbers as you go. The injuries and damages, any description, the causation, any possible defenses. So remember, we want to anticipate the defense as well, because we want the attorney to know going into a deposition or going into trial, we want him to anticipate what the defense is going to say, because then we can come up with, you know, kind of his side of the story and his rebuttal, I guess you could say. So we definitely want him to be aware, or him or her to be aware of what those possible defenses would be. You don't want him going in thinking, you know, not knowing what those would be. So definitely you want to have possible defenses. If there's any missing records or if there's any evidence of tampering. So this is really important. Handwritten documents are a little more difficult to find tampering on because they can just go in and write them. When you have those medical and the electronic medical records, it's a little bit easier because people will go in and they'll tamper documents and they think it goes away, but it doesn't. When you request all those records, and you can get the deleted records as well, you can actually see who went in and at what time and when they mess with those records. So you want to take a real good look at records, even the handwritten records, see if you can notice any tampering and discuss it with your attorney. Potential expert witnesses that you might need, your conclusions and your recommendations. And this is really important because you want to give the attorney some recommendations. If you can't, you know, if you're saying, you know, I don't know if this case is meritorious, but my recommendation is to request A, B, C, and D. And if you get those records, I may be able to give you a better opinion. So those are why you want to make sure that you give the attorney some recommendations, because sometimes you can't really tell someone if there's merit in a case if you're missing, you know, certain documents. So you want to make sure you do that. And then I just have a notes page where I take a bunch of notes. So you can create your own verbal screening form or case screening form. I have this inside of the NNC Members Lounge for my members, so don't worry about that if you are a member. If you're not a member, maybe you want to become a member, because these are really helpful. So then you want to provide the report for merit. Now, it has been my experience since 2009 that I have never had an attorney ask me for a verbal opinion. Some programs teach on giving just a verbal opinion because it's quick and it's less costly to the attorney, but what I've found with the attorneys that I work with is if there is no merit, or if there is merit, they want to be able to explain why or why not to their client. And because a lot of them don't typically understand exactly the whole medical aspect of things, giving them a handwritten report, you know, it's in English that really breaks down and explains what happens in layman's terms, will help them explain to their client what happened. And so this is easy for them because typically they'll be in trial, they'll be really busy, and they will come back to a case and be like, what happened here? And if you gave them a verbal, it's kind of out the window, and you're going to have another conversation with them, and then you have to bill them again. So I always do written reports for my merit reviews. They're typically only 2 or 3 pages, and I actually do what's called a fact sheet and summary. So we actually go over a fact sheet, and I let them know what records I looked at. I tell them the facts of the case. And then I tell them a bit about their medical history, and I let them know, in my opinion, the case is or is not meritorious because, and then these reasons: failure to recognize and treat pain, failure to use and document the use of side rails and med alarm, or whatever it is. You can go through and give them the reasons that you believe the case has merit or does not have merit. So you definitely want to, in my opinion, giving a written report is better than a verbal report, because you know, they forget. They get a lot of cases and they come back to these cases sometimes months later and they're like, wait, what did she say? Why did she say it? Because now I have to sit down and explain this to my client why I'm not taking their case. So that is my opinion on that. And then the last thing, number 5, is you always want to have a title page and a confidentiality statement. So actually I have that right here. Let me show you. So I I just have a title page here with my business logo, the name of the client, the name of the case, the name of the client, the name of the attorney, the date, and then I have another page that has the confidentiality statement and disclosure. And you want to make sure that, I always write on there that this is for the attorney only. Please make sure to protect the patients and have that confidentiality statement on there. I don't just hand over a report with patient information on it. I always make sure there's a title page and that there's also a confidentiality statement page so that anybody who opens this can go, oops, this isn't meant for me. This is meant for attorney so-and-so. Does that make sense? So those are my 5 steps for accepting your first merit case. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Definitely subscribe and like my page. Leave me a comment. And you definitely want to follow us over in the This Nurse Means Business Facebook group page, where you can plug in and get lots of free resources for building your own legal nurse consulting practice or business from home. There's a ton of nurses in there, and we all just love and encourage and support one another. And this is such a great business, you guys. I look forward to getting to meet you inside of that group, and I'll see you all on the next video.